Hi, my name is Michael Atman with Iconasys. Today we'll be doing a real-time workflow video communicating our jewelry photography studio, our jewelry photography turntable, and our Shutterstream 360 product photography software. We're going to dive into just kind of the workflow, kind of tips and tricks along the way, and get you guys up and running so you're creating high quality still and 360 product images in-house fast and efficiently. I'm working with just a basic Canon Rebel T5 camera, Canon 100mm macro lens. Another great choice if shooting small items like jewelry would be the 60mm macro lens if you have a Canon camera. And we'll be shooting just a ring today, just kind of costume jewelry. I've connected my turntable via USB, and I've connected it also via power. So that's powered on, connected to the computer, as well as the camera is also connected via USB to the computer. That's going to be a great first step for you. Place the turntable inside. That'll just sit flush on the floor of the studio, and you'll notice that you would have received some additional tops, as well as some rubber kind of feet. These rubber feet are going to help to ensure that the turntable, when it turns and stops, kind of the torque won't, I guess the rubber feet will just kind of help it stick. So we're going to place this just on top of the turntable, and that will just sit nicely on top. And we're going to enable live view inside of our software. And as you can see, that's a real-time preview of what our camera sees. And again, just reaching my hand in. And what you want to do is have your camera relatively shooting at the center of the turntable. That's going to make it a lot easier for you to kind of help position your objects in the center of the turntable when you're shooting your 360 product photography. Next thing we're going to do is grab our piece of jewelry or the product that we're going to shoot, and we want to put this as close to the center of the turntable as possible. This is kind of a visual step here, so I'm actually going to remove the top of the turntable and kind of look down and place my object in what I think is the center of the turntable, and looks pretty good there. And I can go back and look at the actual live view here and see that that it looks like it's pretty well centered based on kind of with my camera shooting at the center of the turntable here. One thing I should mention is there's a little bit of wobble on the table. Just if I hit the table there, you'll see the actual ring kind of rotate. So it's very important, and I do always suggest to work with a pretty stable table. Just to ensure that your object, or once you start shooting, just walk away so that your object is not going to be moved from, vibrations. So this is a real-time preview of what our camera sees. Let's go ahead. We're just going to click this 360 button up in the top right. And what we want to do here in this first step, where it's going to enlarge this window and move it kind of off to the side, is just rotate the turntable. And I'm just going to hit stop here. You do have a slider for your turntable. That is speed. Fast or slow. Fast will be at 0, the far left. So we're just going to move our ring to kind of a first optimal position here. And I'm just going to stop it as it kind of gets to a straight on view. So visually what I'm going to do here is compose my image, and really what I want to understand is A, shooting for the correct exposure, B, also setting and fixing a focal point, because when I shoot my 360 product photography, I want to be able to retain the same focal point for every single shot to avoid any weird visual effects when we output the actual 360 view. So let's go ahead and we're going to toggle. It might be in AF mode right now on your screen if you're following along. So we're just going to click the button once. That'll take it into MF, and you're going to see a little circle kind of, or a little square blinking. Just kind of move that, and you can move that via these arrows. And pardon me, it's a circle. We're just going to move that over top of our subject, and I'm just going to hit this plus button here. And what that's going to allow me to do is view up close at 1:1, and what we can see here obviously is our object is out of focus. So we can adjust the focal point through mouse clicks. You can see 2 arrows are going to move quite a large increment, 1 arrow a very fine increment, and obviously 3 arrows would be a very large increment. So that looks pretty good there as far as our focal point. So let me just zoom out, and I'm going to say use that focal point for every single shot. I'll just leave this as is. I don't need to do anything further with it. The next thing that we want to do, and we'll get to kind of composing the image with our camera settings in just a minute here, because I'm going to do one other step along the way. We want to, let's ensure that we position our object in the center of the turntable. So I'm just going to hit play, and visually I'm watching to ensure that it is spinning on axis. And it looks like I'm doing pretty good. And really what I'm trying to do here is At each kind of 90 degree, let me just stop the turntable here. And just to dive into this a bit more, if you want to move your turntable and kind of nudge it, like say for instance I want to go counterclockwise 10 degrees to kind of get it back to a straight on shot, or 5 degrees clockwise, you can enter a value inside of here. You can choose the direction and you hit this button, the one with the arrow. And that can kind of, allow you to get to whatever angle you want. That will nudge the turntable, whereas this button is just continuous spin and it'll just continuously play or rotate the turntable. So what I want to do here, I know that it looks pretty well in the center here. So what I could do is just hit 90 degrees. I'm just going to hit go. And I just want to ensure that it's relatively close to the center here. And it looks like it's a little bit off center. And what I'm looking at is kind of this red center line. If you don't have these grid lines, you can go up into the options area and you can go to your live view options. And you're going to see display lines on. I have a 5x5. I've chosen the colors that I want. So just understand that you can do that. It's going to help you with your positioning. So what I want to do here now is I'm actually just going to move my ring back just a tad because it looks like it's slightly off center. And again, what I'm trying to do here is kind of have equal, just the ring I want kind of, equal distance kind of on the left and the right hand side. So that looks relatively close. And what we're going to do here now is, let me just rotate at my next 270 degrees. So I'm just going to enter that in here. I'll hit my play button. And again, visually I'm watching on my screen here and it looks like we've done a very good job now of positioning our object. So the next thing that I want to do here is pre-crop my subject. That is, define the area that I wish to shoot. So this area that I just defined, and you can see the nice thing about this too, there's a little circle in the middle. So you do typically want kind of an even crop on the left and right hand side of your product. So I'll just do it probably about right there, just lining this up with the center of the ring. And I'm going to go and pre-rotate my turntable. Well, let's just do the pre-rotation just with the continuous play. So visually I'm watching here to ensure that as my object rotates, it's not falling outside of this cropped area. As you can see, we might have missed the top there just a tad, but outside of that, everything else looked pretty good. So now that we've kind of optimized that, the last thing I'm going to do is actually just to block out this front. You can see there's a lot of light being let out the front of the turntable, or sorry, of the studio. So what I've done here is I've just taken a white piece of foam board. White piece of paper is going to work great too. I've cut kind of a slit down the top. I've cut a little area out for the USB. And what I'm going to do is, in one of the pieces I cut out, I just added it back in. But you're going to see I'm going to place this kind of over front of the studio. And you can see, and just to actually take a picture, let's just snap one as is here. So we can see it's a little bit dark, and again, we can adjust our camera settings accordingly, but I just want to communicate kind of one thing here when I do this. And don't worry about if we're going to catch this in our frame, we can get rid of these kind of after the fact as far as this black area and the crop marker where it is. So I'm just going to hit snap again here. And looking at picture 1 versus 2, you can see there's not a lot of light being retained in the studio. So by placing something to help cover up the front, like we've done here, we're going to see it's much better, kind of evenly exposed, a better quality image. So we always suggest that just to cover up the front a bit and just cut a little hole of what you're trying to shoot through, and that's going to help, especially with your reflective items. So our next step here, what we're going to do is, again, we can start to adjust our camera settings. And again, if these are too light or too dark, you can start to make changes to your shutter speed, aperture, white balance, sensitization. Typically what would suggest aperture probably between about 10 and 14. You can go lower actually, but you're going to see there you're running some depth issues when shooting kind of macro jewelry photography. And if you go too high in your aperture, you're going to get more kind of a grainy, lower quality image, not as sharp. So good middle ground's probably about, I'd say about 13. And just to add some additional information here, my camera is set back from my subject about 14 inches. Yeah, about 14 inches. You can go anywhere between about 11 and 16 inches. The further back you get, the more depth of field you're going to get. We have a great video on that. If you have any questions, contact us regarding that. So really what I'm just trying to do in this step is just optimizing my camera settings for the lighting. And what you can do as well, you can hit snap and take your photos, and we can see, okay, comparing with that last one, this photo looks a little bit overexposed here. And don't worry about shooting it in a white background. We're going to make some changes after the fact. So let's take a look at maybe 1/15th here with our shutter speed. And looks pretty good. It's a little bit overexposed, so I'm gonna go to about 1/20th here and capture one more image, and that actually looks quite good though. So we're gonna stick with that setting. I'm gonna delete all these images I just captured. This bottom and the button in the bottom right, it says select all, so I'll select that. I will hit my X and I'm gonna delete all these images here. All right, now what I want to do again is go into my live view, and there's one more thing I'm going to do here, and you can do this. You can do it directly through the software. It is in your, I think it's in your live view options. Disable mirror slap. You can adjust it that way. What that's going to do when your camera takes a picture, there's vibrations and it sometimes will hinder image quality. The other option, you can just go ahead onto your camera and enable your live view on the camera, and that will also help with kind of mirror slap. So let's go ahead and get started here. We've pre-cropped our subject. We've adjusted our camera settings. We're going to select the number of frames. You're going to see there's a lot of different options here. Some defaults. You can enter your own custom value. Maybe I'll shoot 90 frames for the purpose of this demo here. The other thing, you're going to notice that this ring would shake a little bit when it would rotate. So I'm going to say slow down the turntable when I'm actually shooting. Maybe I'll put it at setting 3. And you can put a delay. That would be turn stop, and you're going to see if the turn stop and the torque actually cause the ring to kind of vibrate back and forth. We can actually enter a value inside of here. That'll be turn stop, wait, in this case 2 seconds, and then it'll snap. So I'm going to leave this just as is, 2 seconds. Make sure table is locked when idle. We're shooting in clockwise. 4 is going to be our kind of step speed. And I'm just going to hit my start button, and that will automate my image capture workflow. And again, it's waiting 2 seconds in between each shot. As these images are captured, they're going to be uploaded into the application where you can view the images and kind of inspect them as required. This process is completely automated for the 360, so you can walk away or you can go and multitask. The application will run in the background if you wanted to maybe get to some emails or something. And we'll check in after the 360 imaging process is done. So we've now completed our image capture step, and we'll want to move on into the post-production image editing, image processing, 360 product view creation. So what I'm going to do first, and you can go ahead and inspect any one of these images as required. Using a scroll wheel on your mouse, you can quickly slide through. Otherwise, there is left and right arrows, and you can kind of inspect individual images. What I'm going to do is just use this select all button, and again in the bottom right, I'm going to enter into our editing tools. Now inside of the editing tool, I probably would suggest for current customers to go ahead into our user guide. It's very thorough. It's going to dive into each and every one of these features, the benefits, how it works, etc. I'm just going to kind of do some basics here today. And what I'm going to start with first and foremost is just trying to get a white background here. So I'm actually going to use my levels tool. We do have a background removal tool. It's a little bit harder when there is kind of harsh shadows and when there's not much contrast between your subject and your background. So typically what we can do is use something called a white point. And we're going to go and find a pixel. We're looking up here in this RGB color value. And we're looking for kind of a lower number here, kind of the lowest number we see, probably about 207. I'll click that once, and that is going to make every pixel that is lighter than that kind of dark white pixel pure white. And if we see here this RGB value, I scroll my mouse over top, and it's basically at 255, 255, 255. Now what I can do is using the same level, or sorry, what that essentially did, excuse me, was adjust my levels tool, and it took this kind of white point and dragged it left. I'm going to do the same with the darks, and this is going to adjust blacks. You can see if I really crank it up high, it's going to get very dark. So I just want to take that, and you can actually double click on these and it'll actually show you the value. So we'll take that only up to about 7. And then you have a middle slide bar. This is your mid-tones. And you're going to see that's going to take I can make it a little bit darker as well and kind of give our silver more of a proper silver color. So I'll take that just up a tad, and I'm also going to increase my sharpness. Usually about between 2 and 3 is a pretty good value. And I'm going to actually hit apply to all. So in a batch process, that'll erase through the entire set of images and edit everything for me. Now that we've completed kind of our background stuff, what we're going to do is, we can see here, this was kind of part of that front door cover, this part all down here. So what I want to do is actually get rid of that. Now I'm going to take my lasso tool and I want to cut this part out. So essentially what I'm going to do, and in our next version we're going to have an option where you hold shift and that's actually going to draw a straight line. But essentially what I want to do is draw a straight line kind of across the front here. And then what I can do is go ahead and double click, and that's actually going to connect the endpoints. Again, I'm going to hit apply to all, and you can see that line that I just drew. We have something called smoothing in here. So I'm actually going to keep that up to kind of give it a nice slight gradient as it kind of goes from the drop shadow to the actual part that we're moving. And I'm going to add in solid white. So it's replacing everything in the bottom with solid white. And again, this is using our polygon lasso. I'll hit apply and it'll do it in a batch process. And now that we've done that, I would say we're basically ready to go. We could do some more stuff, adjust some color temperatures, recrop it if we want to get rid of some of the top part here, kind of what I'll call the dead frame that we probably don't need. But let's go ahead into our output. We have two different output tools. First one being dynamic saving. You can save this set of images multiple different times. Not going to dive into that, very thorough in our user guide, and our tech support can help if you have any questions on that. I'll just use our standard batch save tool. I'm just going to call this blue stone ring. It's important to put a placeholder, either a dash or an underscore after the name. And what we're going to do is use either, if you're shooting less than 100 frames, 01 sequential naming, or if more than 100 frames, 001. We have batch resizing. Maybe I want to output all these at, say, 1500 pixels wide. We can do that. Image type I'll save as a JPEG. We do have PNG, RAW, and TIFF format as well. And I'll just hit OK, and it's saving to whatever folder I've specified up here. It looks like it's 360 example folder. All right, and that process is complete. We're going to go ahead and inspect that folder. We can see all 90 frames right here. You'll want to ensure you install the 360 View Creator. This is the portion of the application that is responsible for composing our 360 product view. So I'm just going to batch select all these images, drag and drop into the 360 View Creator. And as we can see here, this is a 360 product view that we'd created pretty fast, pretty efficiently. Very high quality result, as we can see. Now these are completely customizable. Obviously you have your output size. You can choose different player buttons. You can go into your advanced settings, choose the button location as well, choose control, mouse control, zoom in, zoom out, rotation, different styles, image fine tuning. There's some kind of unsharp masking, increase, decrease image qualities required, add a watermark. Again, I won't dive into this stuff too much, but basically once you're ready to output your 360 product view, what you can do is just give it a name right here. So we'll just call it ring. Let's browse to our folder. I'll choose our desktop, and I think it was 360 example folder, and I will hit save. And that will output locally. We'll go ahead and inspect that folder. We'll see this ring. This is a file that you can drop onto your own server, host yourself, and again, completely unbranded. And then you can embed it into your website as required, just to show you kind of the output that we just did here. As you can see, a high quality result, very fast, very efficiently. We've got zoom in, zoom out. The other option here is you can upload directly to our stream hosting server. You would just be required to create an account. Our user guide is going to walk you through that in the 360 View Creator user guide. And again, if you have any questions, let us know. Again, the company name is Iconasys. My name is Michael, and we thank you for your time. And if you are a customer, thank you for coming on board as a customer.